The way Will Howard has played through the first half of the season has really impressed me.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to a Feel Good Friday edition of Locked On Buckeyes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Here on Friday, October 18th in the year 2024. I am your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Here with us on a Feel Good Friday, it's Jeff Hunt of the Jeff Needs Sports Podcast, part of the OG3 at the Off the Ball Network. My guy Jeff is here, and we normally do shows at the halfway point of the season, handing out different grades. We're not doing that this year. We're changing things up. Because after the Oregon loss, we just kind of had to ride that wave a little bit longer into this week. Well, Jeff is here on a Friday, and we're focusing on QB1, Will Howard, because y'all want to open up with this statement and not kind of shy away from making a statement about how I truly think about Will Howard. Jeff, he's really impressed me with the way he's played this year.
Yeah, it's been awesome, man. For everything he was asked to do, like the more, because it's, we all know as Buckeye fans how we felt coming off, of last season, the terrible game in the Cotton Bowl. McCord hits the portal the day it opens. We know we're in limbo with like who's coming back, who's coming in the portal. Like we don't know anything. We're waiting. Cam Ward goes to Miami. It's like that's the guy. I think everybody thought that Cam Ward, had a good chance at winding up as a Buckeye. We know the freshmen are coming in, but we're like that's not we can't do that. Apologies to Devin Brown, but none of us think that, we can win a national championship with Devin Brown. And then finally they announced Will Howard from Kansas State. So, I would suppose a lot of Buckeye Nation didn't see a lot of, Howard and know a lot about Howard. And some of us got to watch a decent amount of Howard. If nothing else, the Big 12, I believe it was, championship game back then against TCU that went to the national championship game. That stuck in my mind. But then I remember being like, okay, here's the momentum.
Yeah.
The future, this season was pinned on Will Howard. And then I kept thinking to myself, here was the criteria. All they said was like, hey, we need you to come, play for the biggest college football brand in the world. We're going to give you one of the best rosters in the history of Ohio State football. We there's a 12-team playoff format coming up this year. Oh yeah, you have to beat your biggest rival, who is the defending national championship. And oh yeah, you basically might be able to lose one game this year. That's all you have to do. In the most overreactionary, rabid, passionate fan base in the world. You got it, Will. And Will said, "Yeah, I got you." And it's been better than advertised. It's been an absolute. I'm so pleased. Here's all I can say about Will Howard this season: he ain't the problem.
He is not the problem. He has not been the problem. He's actually been a major bright spot because, Jeff, he has been better than advertised.
Yeah.
There were a couple of hesitations I had with Will Howard coming into the year. Accuracy overall, he was a 60% passer coming in for his career. That's not sexy. That doesn't make me excited. So I'm wondering, are you going to be more accurate? The deep ball accuracy, the deep balls, how strong is his arm? Doesn't have the strongest arm. But
yeah.
I'm like, okay, so you're basically throwing deep balls to two guys, Abuka and Jeremiah Smith. I'm cool with that. Even if it's underthrown, I trust those guys to make plays. So I'm not really harping on the lack of arm talent or lack of arm strength because it hasn't really been a major issue. And also the accuracy, Jeff, I just pulled this up. So far this year, he's a 73.3% passer. Yeah. That's up from 61.3% last year, which was his career high for a season. So, I mean, he's already stepping up. He's already showing everyone he's a better passer. He's more accurate. And it's not just because of the receivers that are on the team with him, Jeff. He's a better passer because he's put in that work in the offseason. Yeah. And they said from the spring to the first day of fall camp, something clicked, and he got it. And when he stepped on the field in the fall for the first time in the horseshoe, he got it. And he's been leading the Buckeyes like you want QB1 to lead this team.
Yeah, it's been awesome. And you touched on that. That's another thing I like is, again, I live, right here in, Central Ohio. So like Will Howard's, he's on our TV screens, he's on commercials, we see a lot of him, and he immediately like absorbed Buckeye Nation, became a part of it. Became a true Buckeye. Like he understands that part of it also as far as the fan base. But again, I've watched him throw. Yes, I agree. Like he's not the most accurate deep ball passer. That's not going to happen. We knew that. I'm not going to call it a flaw, but it's one of his deficiencies. But what he's made up with, he's thrown 4 or 5 throws this season that I'm like, we're perfect.
Yeah,
And and here's the thing: everybody says, well, he's got those receivers. Yeah, that's who he's throwing to. So that's his job, is to throw to those receivers. But also it takes that type of receiver to even be able to throw that throw.
correct.
So like, when he's got Smith or Egbuka or, whoever going to the corner of the end zone, and he puts it perfectly over the shoulder or back shoulder or where nobody else can get it, that's because he's taking advantage of their talent level. How many times have we said on here, Jay, like a great chef, give them better ingredients and the food keeps getting better. And that's what Howard did. Like, I bet if you go back and listen to the show that we did this summer about Will Howard, we said all these things were possible, and he's done it. And then, his legs have added exactly what we've been asking for, even since CJ Stroud was there. We're like, just the threat of running the ball, or just tuck it and pull it every now and then, get that first down, get that touchdown. And, as bad as the loss hurt, last Saturday night versus Oregon, I think we saw all of the big game stuff that we needed to see out of Howard. We saw the 4th down runs. We saw the goal line runs. The truth is, like, not to talk about that, last offensive pass interference, but Will Howard, not knowing that that's going to be called, made the throw that in his mind, when he lets go of that ball puts his team in position to win the game. So like, I got to give him credit for that, because when that ball's in the air, we do not know that what's going to happen. We do not know it's going to be, 10 yards back and then, wind up costing him a victory. When he lets go of that ball, the time it's in the air, in his mind, he did everything he could do to win the game. That's what we asked him to do. So I'm surprised at how impressed I have been with Will Howard, his attitude, his poise on the field, all of these things. I don't think we could have asked for more coming out of 2023 season. This is as good as we could have absolutely asked for.
That poise word is one that I think has been overlooked about Will Howard's play so far. You talk about some of the throws he's making, in the one to Jeremiah Smith and some of the ones to the front corner of the end zone to Egbuka, or just some of the balls on the sideline where the ball placement is perfect. And I didn't really appreciate ball placement until Stroud came to Ohio State. I was like,
he's
the
best
just
ever.
he's just throwing the ball right where it needs to be every single time. And then you see a guy like Will Howard, who is not the thrower that CJ Stroud is, but he is still able to have those moments where you're in awe at the elite ball placement that he has with this game. He's raising his draft stock currently. I don't know what kind of career he'll have in the NFL. I don't think he'll be a 10-year starter, but he could probably be a journeyman, be a backup, and be a guy that's making millions of dollars holding a clipboard down the road. Nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
I do think for Ohio State this year, and for fans in particular, because I know a lot of people are still upset about the loss. I mean, you have a reason to be. It stings.
Yeah.
Will Howard is not the problem. I've done shows about it. Jeff said it earlier. We're going to say it once again. He's not the problem. He is a major bright spot with this team. And the fact that Ohio State has him as QB1 right now, when there are things that offensively the team needs to fix, I have full trust in Will Howard to lead the offense, to make the necessary adjustments. Even with losing the left tackle, I have full trust in him to make all the adjustments and to lead this unit the way that it needs to be led. And I think, Jeff, you haven't spoken yet, but I think you agree with that statement.
Oh, I totally do. And another thing, to add on to that, another thing that he hasn't done this year, and I understand what the schedule has been this year. He hasn't he has been tested a lot until Oregon, but he hasn't played panicky. He hasn't played scrambling around, running for his life in the pocket, and then taking advantage. He's played within the system. So most of the great throws that he's made have been within the system, and that is sustainable. That's repeatable. It hasn't been, off the cuff. It hasn't been improvisation. it's been him playing within the system, making the read, and then putting it where the guy needs to get it. And then the other thing I'll add about Will Howard is if we'll say there's this world where they finished the job last Saturday night. He doesn't have to make another throw if they kick that field goal and win the game. And then if there was some preseason hype, there's no reason Will Howard wouldn't be on the Heisman watch list. I mean, if you compare his numbers across, because I'm just saying, as far as like it always goes to like a really good player on a really good team, with a little hype and that win, we would be talking about that, because essentially he's had the same season as a lot of, Dylan Gabriel and a lot of these other quarterbacks. Just now he's got the loss on there. Now I know it's not going to happen, and I don't even care about that. But my point being is, like, his level of play for a great team has been really good, and it's been really impressive. And he appears to get a little better every week in the offense. I'm really excited to see what the next, especially 2 games, look like for Will Howard, because that's what the Buckeye season has come down to, is these next 2 games, Nebraska, Penn State.
As we continue this conversation about Will Howard, a question comes into my mind about the offense that he leads. Does Ohio State have a championship level offense? We'll answer that question next. This episode is brought to you by Hims. Your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have the time to go to a doctor's office to get treated for ED. Through Hims, you can get a personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside your door. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. So, Jeff, last time you were here, we did this question about the defense. We both said no. And then a few weeks later, Ohio State played Oregon, and we kind of got the answer once again, but it was on the field for 60 minutes. We kind of got the answer confirmed that we both believe. So when it comes to the offense, I want to answer this question first, and I don't know what your thoughts are. We didn't share these before the show. I'm going to wait and see before answering this question, because Ohio State just lost their left tackle. Their starting right guard's a little banged up. I believe the tight end, Kazmarek, is hurt too. There's a lot of injuries on that unit to very key players. So I'm kind of in a wait-and-see mode. If everybody's healthy, I would say yes, absolutely. Like, I would have no problem saying this is a championship-level offense. Even with that one loss to Oregon, I think this offense is a championship-level offense if everyone's healthy. But I'm in a wait-and-see mode due to injuries to some very key positions.
Yeah, I like this offense, and I like what Chip Kelly's done. I think that it's worked. Probably the lowest point, it was the second half of the Oregon game, to where Chip kind of and it's always easy to say got away from the run game.
Yeah.
But we also know, like, coaches have reasons for doing a lot of stuff. But like when it was the first half of Oregon was a championship offense. And so which tells me, yes, we absolutely have the ceiling to have a championship level offense when things are going good. Both running backs have looked pretty good this year. Judkins is better than probably advertised. I mean, that dude's awesome. We were mixing the tight ends a little bit, more than we have the last few years, just because of like some of the power run stuff. Howard is a threat with these legs, and Egbuka and Smith are absolute ballers out there. I think Egbuka might be the most important player on the offense right now as far as the glue that's holding everything together and performance and everything else. So this team, we'll put it this way. If you ask me like, hey, no team can score more than, we'll say 24 on Ohio State guaranteed. Can you win a national championship? I would say yes. I trust my offense to score 25 points against any team in the country if they're right. But that's every team across the country.
Correct.
I've seen Georgia has major flaws on offense right now. I know they're going to get better. I know they're going to be good. We're going to find out a lot about Georgia this weekend, but like, that's just an example of like, we all think that like, we know Georgia can win a national championship, but their offense looks way more flawed or in construction than Ohio State's. Alabama, we've seen the flaws on there, so like none of these teams will look perfect. Probably one of the scariest teams is now Oregon. Feels like they're starting to figure out who they are on offense. And I keep telling everybody, like, by December, that Oregon team is going to be awesome. Texas, when they're clicking, a lot of weapons, great quarterback. So I'm not going to sit here and say that Ohio State's offense is better than them, but I'm going to say that like, if a defense steps up for a game, I do at least have faith that Ohio State's offense can beat anybody in the country.
And I think that's an easy thing to say, and that's a true thing to say, because I'd agree with you. I do think the offense right now, when it's clicking, man, I've never seen an Ohio State offense flow this well. I mean, even under Urban's offenses were a little bit it's
a little different animal.
It's different, man, because Urban's like the JT Barrett to Dwayne Haskins. That's one of the most drastic changes at all. What'd you find? That thing was still clicking like it was like it was like you just couldn't stop it. So it gets drastic there. But this offense this year, and we've seen it against Iowa. As good as Iowa's offense or defense is every single year, the second half, they couldn't stop Ohio State at all. Now, granted, they were also turning the ball over, which put Ohio State in favorable field position, but Iowa couldn't stop it. And if Iowa can't stop your offense,
you're pretty good.
You're doing a lot of things right. And I think that's what gives me hope. I have a lot of hope with this offense, even with the injuries to left tackle and maybe tight end. I'm not really truly worried. And that's a little cautious. I guess it scares me because if any team loses their left tackle and your backup doesn't rarely plays at all, you should be nervous. And I'm a little nervous.
Yeah.
I'd be more nervous if they shuffled guys that have been multi-year starters at that position and said, no, move outside or move inside. I'd be more nervous there. I trust Justin Fry, the O-line coach, in a way that I didn't trust him before the year because, man, he has his O-line playing so well this year.
Yeah.
Like a well-oiled machine, and bringing in McLaughlin from Alabama,
Oh,
that may be as key as bringing in Will Howard.
You're right.
Because I don't think McLaughlin gets enough credit for how well he's played this year.
He's doing fantastic. He is so good at playing center. And I mean that as far as like, it's one thing just to be a good offensive lineman. It's another thing to be really good at whatever position you are on the offensive line. Great center. Probably, you know what? You're right. Egbuka is probably the second most important player on the offense as far as like outside of quarterback. I mean, that's obvious, but he's been better than advertised. I think he's really held things down. He's great at getting to the second level. I think he's opened up the run game. And then once you open up the run game a little, then it opens up a little more of the pass game. We're not as like, that's the thing about Ohio State. Even the last few years, like when you like, they're a weird team to where they appeared one-dimensional. Then you look at the stats and you're like, no, the stats are pretty even. Yep. But we know as watching the team, like as play calling, it always felt one-dimensional. It's like either going to be a run or it's going to be a pass. And I know that sounds easy, but it really was, and it was really easy to tell. This team, I mean, will gouge you when they might get 5-6 yards on first down. They haven't done that in years. And then all of a sudden, well, now you can do whatever you want, especially like worst case, Will takes off. So it's the play calling's been good. The mixture's been good. They keep the other defense on their heels. Again, that's another one of those things about the Oregon game, just to like put more icing on the cupcake that I'm trying to build here. The only reason Ohio State didn't score was they just ran out of time. And I know that sounds easy. It wasn't Oregon's defense stopping Ohio State. Ohio State just ran out of time.
Yeah.
They had the bad punt, the series before that. No arguments here. But other than that, like they drove the ball down the field. Like I think they could have done whatever. If you give them a minute, Ohio State easily wins that game.
Mm-hmm.
So, and by that, I'm just being optimistic by saying like it wasn't like the offense didn't know what to do. They didn't panic. You know what I mean? They just ran out of time. And like that, I would rather deal with that than dealing with like my quarterback got scared. Receivers couldn't get open. The running game stalled a little. I think there's some work there to do, but anytime you're going to have a high powered passing, attack like Ohio State, your running game is going to suffer because that's just how these things work. We know that nobody's ever had the best running attack and passing attack. Even LSU 2019 didn't have both. Like you have to give up something to have the other. So, I feel great about the offense right now, as bad as I feel about the defense, moving forward.
Well, that's going to get us right to the next topic here because I was going to prolong this offensive conversation, but Jeff just led me right through a door that I have to go right through. It's about Jim Knowles. I have not done a lot this week about ripping Jim Knowles on multiple shows, but I feel like with the way that Jim Knowles has led the defense during his time at Ohio State, it's time to have an honest conversation about if he is dropping the ball in big games. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Once again, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. All the action goes down on the FanDuel Sportsbook app and at FanDuel.com. Jeff, I'm confused because this is not something I expected when Jim Knowles got hired at all. I don't think I expected it. You expected it. I was excited. We talked about that jack position, that hybrid DN linebacker spot. That's been absent.
I was going to say the imaginary jack position.
They recruited guys and said, oh, this is your spot. They're not playing that position. We have been almost going crazy talking about, hey, we need more pressure. And there's no pressure in these big-time games. And, Jeff, I wonder, I'm going to not go to Knowles first. I want to go to kind of us. When Knowles has showed us what he is as a coordinator, and the defensive ends and defensive linemen have showed us what they are as pass rushers, is this what we should expect from Ohio State in big games? Because if this is what you should expect from Ohio State in big games, it confirms, one, the question we asked a while ago, this is not a championship-level defense, and two, there are major concerns Ohio State fans should have when the Buckeyes play big games.
Yeah, you're 100% right. This isn't. So this is the opposite. This isn't what the offense is. So this defense can't stop everybody in the country. Now, is there a weird path through the playoffs and a path through the Big Ten that this defense matches up against certain teams at certain times and avoids this team and all that? And then the defense is good enough to get them, we'll say, a couple playoff wins. Yes, but also there's matchups that don't favor this defense. Like, I don't know, Oregon again.
Yeah.
Still Knowles, no answer for lack of a better term, a good quarterback. Like, when you play a good quarterback, he doesn't make them look silly. And I told you before the show, he just doesn't make quarterbacks overthink at the line of scrimmage. And then therefore, you brought it up before the show, when you don't make the opposing team's quarterback think, now he's comfortable, now he can make any throw he wants. Now the defensive backs that he insists on putting on an island as if he's got Lawrence Taylor rushing the quarterback. Well, now you just almost can't cover a guy for 3 seconds down the field, and the quarterback's able to step in and make whatever throw he wants without any concern. So like Knowles is playing this weird, I don't even know what you call it. It's like a 2-layer defense. It's like rush 4 and then kind of like it's almost like a dime. If anything, he's playing like a dime defense, but you can't do that in an era in football where you can't touch receivers. You can't, you're going to get called for interference for anything. So I don't care how many guys you drop into coverage. If you can't rough up receivers, like, it's still open throws for good quarterbacks. Yes. Is he going to beat average quarterbacks or bad quarterbacks? Absolutely. Because he's got the athletes and he's got the playmakers. But we saw they played one really good quarterback and they lost because of that. Not they didn't lose to Dylan Gabriel's team. Gabriel beat them. That was, and he took advantage of all the flaws that we've been talking about, and it's not something that you can fix overnight. So that's another problem with it. No pressure. You talked about it. This jack position or whatever he tried to do is not working. There's no way you can't tell me we said this last year, Jay. We said it the year before. You can't tell me there's not a player somewhere on Ohio State's team that is a good enough athlete to cause damage, coming off of this hybrid position or whatever. We haven't seen that. JTT and Sawyer, they haven't regressed, but they also haven't progressed. They're the same players they were a few years ago. And I think this is going to be a situation again where 3 years from now, we're going to be looking at either Sawyer or JTT. Just pick one. They're going to be in the NFL and they're going to be playing for a team. Just like the other night, I saw Tommy Eichenberg is an NFL player. And you're like, what went wrong in college? Sawyer or JTT, we're going to see him playing decent on an NFL team and go, wow, we really messed up. We really wasted a lot of talent, because I refuse to believe that the problem with this defense is talent. When I see all these teams across the country with less talent than Ohio State play good defense. So I refuse to believe that Iowa every year just out recruits Ohio State on defense. I refuse to believe that.
Right.
And yet we can't put together a fourth quarter defensive stopping team. I mean, it's got to be a scheme thing. You can go look at all the video you want, guys out of position. Again, it's just a staple of this Jim Knowles defense that players always look like sort of confused. Yes. And I don't mean that the players don't know what they're doing. There's a breakdown in communication somewhere between the players and the coaching. It's either overcoaching, undercoaching. I don't know what it is, but they do not look like they're free thinking players in crunch time.
One of the confusing things that I saw in this Oregon game, and Jeff, I'm trying to move past it, but there's so much in this that confuses me. And
it's the biggest game of the year. It's the biggest game of the year. It's fair.
There were times on defense, Ohio State wasn't ready at the snap of the ball.
Exactly.
They teach you this in Little League, bro. Hey, if the center's on the ball, get in your stance because you don't know when he's going to snap it. This is very much 101 level football, and these guys aren't ready. There was a time, and this isn't I don't want to knock Center Styles for this because maybe he needs to hear from the coach before. Hey, there was a time at the snap of the ball, his back was to the ball.
Yep.
And so the communication part you're talking about, that was on Front Street on Saturday night. And I don't think, yes, it was in large part due to the crowd that they're playing in front of. But also, this happens in bowl games when it's a neutral crowd. This happens at home in big games. I am confused. These guys that play football at higher levels than either you or I have ever played. These guys are more talented, more skilled, more athletic. So, they have a lot of things already that make them great. Why is this happening at Ohio State? This is not I'm going to start saying names here, and if you're a part of those fan bases, forgive me. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. This isn't Georgia Tech. This is not Florida right now. This isn't USC. This is Ohio State, bro. This stuff shouldn't happen.
And to pile on, Jay, since we're having a little bit of a moment here, let's also remember that when the people all week, people defending Ohio State, like the fans, it's right now, there is a battle between Ohio State fans of oh, you got to get over it, or I see what the real problems here are. But here's what we can say. One of the arguments is this is what happens when you bring, again, there's this perception that Ohio State brought in 30 new players this year through the portal, and they're all trying to figure it out. No, this defense, these players stayed.
Yeah.
Their best defensive back stayed. Their best defensive linemen stayed. Their linebackers all stayed. This is a returning defense. This is not the offensive side of the ball where Judkins is new, where the quarterback is new on the offensive side of the ball. He wasn't there, 8 months ago. This is a defense that brought everybody back, no excuses, and added the best defensive back in the country by most means. And still the confusion, and still the mistakes, and still the lack of physicality, still the lack of pass rush. All these things, at some point it has to be schematic. That's all there is to it. If you're not if Knowles cannot find a way to manufacture pressure or even just a perception of pressure, that's the thing. You don't always have to pressure the quarterback, but you have to make him think you are.
Correct.
But he doesn't. Quarterbacks are not scared to play against the Ohio State defense. In the fourth quarter, Gabriel was not wore out. He was not hit. He was playing, he was playing at full speed. You can't beat a team that way. And now guess what we have coming up? 2 more really dynamic quarterbacks that if you don't hit them are going to, in the fourth quarter, are going to torch you.
Jeff, let's think about this real quick. The Jim Knowles conversation and just look at big picture. I believe he came in 2022. Ohio State during the time period lost to Michigan twice, lost to Georgia, lost to Oregon, lost to Missouri. That's J.J. McCarthy 2 times. That's Stetson Bennett, who's I can't believe he lost to them. Oh my gosh,
it's the same conversation we're having right now.
Lost to Dylan Gabriel. You lost to Brady Cook. Now Cook is a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong. But you're basically saying that he's not losing to any.
I'll say this real quick on defense. Yeah. They played good against Cook. That was a terrible game. Like Cook didn't do anything.
No.
But that game, does that game even count?
If we take him out, you're looking at 4 guys: 2 against McCarthy, 1 against Bennett, 1 against Gabriel, and J.J. McCarthy was a first-round pick. He was not a first-round talent. I don't know what people thought. We also don't know what he'll be in the NFL because, unfortunately, it's hurt. Like, I don't want players to get hurt at all, like rivalry or not.
Right.
Sorry for Aiden Hutchinson, all you Lions fans are not Lions fans. I hated seeing Hutchinson get hurt.
That was awful.
That one sucked. But what you're basically saying is
decent
safety-driven defense that Knowles brought in, which one I thought was so stupid. Your defense doesn't start from the back end. It starts from the front out. So if you're saying safety-driven defense, maybe you're saying what you're getting for the defensive line is exactly what he expected, and that ain't good enough. That's not good enough at all.
No.
But these are the quarterbacks that Ohio State normally just handles quickly and soundly and has no issues with. But they're struggling to beat these guys. These aren't elite passers. These aren't elite quarterbacks. But Ohio State's struggling under Jim Knowles' watch, and that's a major problem, a huge problem.
Yeah.
And he might be up on his way out. Like, if Ohio State doesn't win the national championship, he may be up out of here, man.
He's got to be. And Jay, here's the thing. You and I watch a ton of football.
Yeah.
There are great looking defenses across the country with good defensive minds. It's just as simple as this. It's just not working. I'm not going to sit here and say that Jim Knowles isn't a good coach. I'm just saying it's not working. So, like, you can go somewhere else and be a great coach, have all the success in the world. It ain't happening here.
Nope.
Like, you've just got something in place that is not working right now for your talent base. And the thing is, just like you just said, this isn't a 4-year plan. This is a 4-month plan. Like, this has to be fixed during the bye week, or you're going to waste one of the most promising seasons in the history of Ohio State football.
Jeff, last thought here. You and I have been doing this and saying the same thing. I've been hosting this show since 2019, and outside of 2019, we've all had the same conversation that Ohio State's defense does not look like other defenses in the South. They do not look as fast, as aggressive. And now you're saying they don't look as fast or aggressive as Oregon, a team out in the Pacific Northwest. It's the same old song and dance, man. It's a sense of deja vu.
They're not as good as Oregon. They're not as good as Michigan. They're not as they might be as good as Iowa. Maybe. I don't know.
That's a problem.
That's in their own conference. That's just in their own conference.
That's a problem. That's a problem, Jeff.
Yeah.
You can't fix it this year. And recruits see this. And so if guys start flipping to go other places, is it on Ryan Day? He's not a player, but he's allowing this to happen year after year after year. I am not calling him John Cooper. That's your territory. You can do that if you want to. But if somebody
John Cooper had great defenses.
Oh, well, maybe he's not that good. I don't know, man. I'm confused, Jeff. I'm so confused that, once again, Ohio State's players do not look as aggressive or as fast as other elite defenses.
Yeah. I don't quite understand. Like I say, it's a hesitancy that they play with. That, again, I know it's not the athletic ability. I know it's not the skill level. I know it's none of that. I don't think that we're the most talented defense in the country, but we're talented enough.
Correct.
We should be able to step up. There's just, I think it's all just like what you're taught to do, what your reads are. And I also think that it might just be an easy defense to game plan against, because other teams seem to be like, they know, like Oregon went right ran specific plays early in that game that they knew would work. So that comes from watching film. That comes from scouting. That comes from being like, we know where the weaknesses are, exploit them. And they have the quarterback that did it. I think we've seen so many times like Michigan State couldn't do that because they're just not quite good enough. Doesn't mean that they don't see it. Doesn't mean that it's not there. Just not quite good enough. But Penn State's good enough. And so we're going to find out in 2 weeks. I hope Jeff and Jay are like, wow, I can't believe how wrong we were. We just beat Penn State by 40 and they didn't score or something like that. But what I would say is like, I wouldn't want to have that, and I also believe the Oregon's, we always say this every year. Jay and I are national championship or kind of bust kind of guys.
Yeah.
So when we're criticizing Ohio State, we're basing it on watching Alabama, watching Georgia, watching Oregon, watching Penn State. We're not worried about playing decent.
No.
We're worried about, can we, I said it, I told Jay before the show, can we beat four playoff teams in a row to win a national championship with this defense? And as of right now, no, because of everything that, we've just said.
Y'all, I love having Jeff on the show. I didn't know it was going to go this deep, but hey, it just happens. We're both crazy fans. We love being analysts, love being talking heads, whatever you want to call us. And we're just boys that want Ohio State to win. That's all we want.
Yes.
It's the bye week. Ohio State better get it together because Nebraska's going to come in and try to spoil homecoming weekend. I don't want it to happen. Jeff don't want it to happen. I'm sure you don't want it to happen either. What are your thoughts about Ohio State right now at this point in the season? Drop them on YouTube, leave a 5-star review or rating on any podcast platform. We greatly appreciate it. You can follow Jeff on Twitter at jhun006. Follow me on the same platform at jstevens07. Y'all, this has been Locked on Buckeyes on a Feel Good Friday. No show tomorrow. No postcast on Saturday. No Buckeye game. Your boy's not getting behind the mic on a Saturday. I'll be doing that next Saturday after that Nebraska game. And Jeff and I think all of us hope it's a Buckeyes win. Go Bucks.